so that you can jump in and ask them as they're going through. And just a disclaimer from my side, I'm hoping that you can all hear me okay and I'm not sounding like a robot. I've already got a low bandwidth warning my end. Within my household, we've got 2 adults working full-time from home and a child on video calls for homeschooling. So if there are any problems with bandwidth during the session, I do apologise. Do let me know if you have any issues, if there is no sound or visual in the chat bar. I've got my colleagues from the Clare Foundation also in the room today, Martin and Felicity, and I'm sure they'll be monitoring the chat and can contact me by WhatsApp if we have a complete technical meltdown. So I think probably let's get underway. We're up to 24 and it's 5 past, so let's get underway with today's session. So I'd like to obviously welcome Ed and Chloe officially. I'm sure they'll say a little bit about themselves. So rather than me doing a long intro, I'll ask you guys just to say a little bit about yourselves and your backgrounds to introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'll kick off and then I'll hand over to Chloe. But yeah, I'm Ed, I'm part of Brevio. I kind of at the moment work alongside and work with a lot of the charities to sort of help them to get the most out of the platform, and also starting to work a lot with the funders as well. Yeah, it'd be good today, as Helen mentioned, throughout to get some of your interactions throughout, and more than happy to answer any questions in the chat throughout the presentation that Chloe will give. But also we'll open the floor up to some questions at the end of the presentation. So I'll hand over to Chloe.
Thanks, Ed. So hi guys, I'm Chloe. Thanks for joining this morning on this dreary Tuesday morning. Appreciate everyone's warm and snug in their houses. So I won't make this too long. I'm going to do a relatively quick kind of synopsis of what Brevio is and how it might potentially help you in your organisation.
Chloe, sorry to jump in.
Yeah.
I'm actually not able to select the record option, so I wonder if you can record from your end. Brilliant.
Yeah,
thank you.
No worries at all. And the reason for that is that if anybody does want to share this with colleagues or people who might be interested after, we can email it over. It might be useful for you rather than having to Chinese whispers after. So I'll run through. If there's any questions, as Ed said, just pop them in the chat box, and also we can just have a bit of an open floor Q&A at the end as well. But hopefully I'll kind of cover and give you enough information around what it is for you to go off and have a bit of an explore of Brevio once we've finished the session. So my background, my name's, as I said, Chloe, and my background with Brevio, I've been with Brevio since its launch early in 2020. Brevio has been in research phase for a couple of years prior to that. We'll talk a little bit at the end about how it was founded and who founded it, but it was basically based off the knowledge that grant making within the UK, as I'm sure many of you have faced, is quite a complex environment and can be really painstakingly tiresome, and also a lot of resources are spent on finding, researching and applying for grant applications, and in a world where everything's become digital, obviously we're always looking for better solutions and things that can save us a lot of time and energy trying to get back to the things that our organisations do. So my background is commercial as well as social enterprise. So I've worked on a lot of international technology startups, and the idea of Brevio and myself coming in and Ed coming in is that we support people from both sides of the platform and its use, but also speak to people who are using it on a regular basis to find out how we can make it better for them. We by no means go out and just create whatever. We feel like it's all based off feedback and user feedback. So when people go in and say, oh, it could be done better this way, we actively take that on board and we go ahead and go and build it in a way that makes sense for people. So the platform is being created completely based off of this. So we'll move in without further ado onto what actually is Brevio. So the way I like to describe it is it's both sides of the coin. So on the left-hand side, Brevio is a grants application and matching platform for all non-profits. When we talk about all non-profits, we talk about registered charities, unregistered CICs, community groups, volunteer organisations, social enterprises. Anybody with a charitable mission can use Brevio. You'll identify with inside of your organisational profile what kind of organisation that you are, and those funders that want to fund organisations within your remit will be able to be matched with you. And then on the right hand side, Brevio is a data-powered giving and tailored solution for all funders. And when we talk about all funders, we talk about philanthropists, we talk about corporate foundations, we talk about traditional grant making and trusts. So anybody that likes to fund charitable missions and organizations can use Brevio. So the idea of this is that we wanted to make it all encompassing and work for different people with different types of funding needs and different types of funding missions as well. So we'll move on to how it works specifically for charities or non-profits, as we call them. So Brevio is a bit like a dating app. And I laugh a little bit as I say this because for some people this will resonate and for others it won't at all. But dating apps, obviously in the 21st century, have definitely moved on since the worlds of leaving ads in the newspapers or Match.com. Brevio is basically a smart technology. And the reason we talk about it a little bit like a modern dating app is that modern dating apps continuously match you with new people and new opportunities. So you wouldn't just apply once. In the background, once you've built a profile, it continues to match you to potential grant makers. And we'll go into a little bit more detail around how it does this. But essentially, as a nonprofit, you'd only be matched to a fund when you actually become eligible for it. So you don't have to go out and look for suitable funding. The platform will tell you, this is what's suitable for you, you've been matched, and then you basically do a one-click apply. Very similar to a dating app in the modern world. So how does Brevio actually work for nonprofits? So on here on the screen, you can see a couple of screenshots. And these are screenshots from actually within the side of the platform. So what it would look and feel like to you if you applied as a nonprofit. So on the left-hand side, you can see a bit of a dashboard environment. And at the top, it's got some ticks and some symbols. And essentially what happens is you go into the platform and you'll start filling out little bits of information. So there's only minimal information that you're going to need to begin with, just to start getting some preliminary basic matching going on. And as you start to put in more information, we can start to learn more about your organization and basically start to find you more niche and complex matches. So you'll see there's a progress bar, so it's really easy to understand where you're at with it. And the reason that it's done like this is that you might not have time to fill it all out in one go, but you also might not have the right information that you need to fill out in one go. So you might want to invite other people in your organization, which is really easy to do. You can just click invite and pop in their email address. They'll also be able to enter the platform and you can start to fill it out together at the same time. And you can do that with as many people as you need to in your organization. Obviously really useful when you're working from home and you might have somebody in one department with one set of information and another person with another set of information. And then what you have here on the left-hand side at the bottom are your matches. So as you become matched with different funders in the platform, you'll basically be shown all of the matches and you'll be notified by email you've had a new match. And what you can do is jump in and you can click view grant and it will give you a very sort of basic high level information around what actually is the grant, and it will let you know how you've been matched. So you might have been matched on the fact that you are geographically in a certain area. You might have been matched on something much more complex, like the diversity of your board. You might have been matched on the amount of money that you need or what it was that you're actually going to spend it on. There's about 800,000 million things that we can be matched on, and the platform does that all in the background, so you don't have to. And on the right-hand side, you've got my funding needs. So once you are inside of the platform, you can start to build out and develop your different funding needs. So as we know, everybody right now has got core costs. On top of core costs, you might have a unique project that you're looking to run. You might have a one-off thing that you need to fund. You can create funding needs for anything. There's lots of examples around what type of funding needs that you might want to create. And we've got lots of really useful resources because there's all types of different funding needs that you can build to find different matches. So even though your organization right now might need core costs, you might in 3 months' time think, we've got this really unique bespoke project that we want to start running, or maybe our volunteers need new things, or maybe we actually want to build a brand new building to house something. These are all different types of funding needs, and you can start to build out different funding needs using the information you've already put inside of the Brevio platform. And the reason that you're going to have different funding needs is they're going to match you with different grant makers on the other end of the spectrum. One grant maker might want to fund a housing project, but another might want to fund a food bank project. So you build out your different funding needs to suit different funders, and you can see all of them really easily in your funding dashboard. So you can go in, you can preview your application, you can see who you've applied to with that funding need. It'll tell you the closing date if you were successful. All of the information is basically inside this one portal that you can use. So why does it actually exist? Why did we even bother to build Brevio? So we touched a little bit earlier on around the exhaustion that people face when trying to apply for funding and different grants. We also did some recent polling. So we did some research a long time ago now, about 2 years ago, and we continue to validate this research. So the amount of time and money wasted on finding and applying for grants, often we find that there's a high percentage of those fail. And essentially what we want to do is make sure that people aren't wasting time filling out grants that they might not be eligible for, and to only be told you might not be eligible further down the line. Further to that, there's a few stats here that I just want to run through, and this was polling done just 6 to 8 weeks ago. So we did 2 separate polls across lots of different charities across the UK. And what we found that is that 80% of UK charities don't believe that grants are distributed on a level playing field. And I'm sure that people have come across that, where people start to fund maybe the same circles of people over and over again. And that's great when they've created partnerships with those organisations, but sometimes that does leave other people on the outside of the circles feeling that they're not getting access to funding. 77% want a modernised, centralised application system. So what I like to talk about is a bit like UCAS. So UCAS was actually founded back in 1961, believe it or not, when it was called UCAC. And essentially UCAS for universities in the UK is the same premise as Brevio. It's basically a centralised portal where you would just fill out all of the information that you need and you'll start getting matched to universities. Completely the same premise. And charities are reporting spending 60% of their week on grant applications as a result of Brevio. And when we talk about grant applications, we mean lots of different types of funding applications. It might be as simple as going onto a website and filling out a few questions, and then they want more information further down the line, right through to calling kind of old funders that you've been in touch with in the past. So a huge amount of time is being spent on looking for funding right now to ensure that organisations aren't collapsing. And at the bottom here, we've got a couple of organisations and charities that we've been working with who are brilliant. So we've got the Childhood Trust on the left, who essentially has said that Brevio matched to new grants via Brevio without having to expend so much time on unsuccessful bids can really substantially help to support many more children in need. And what they're essentially saying there is, without having to waste time constantly applying and looking for different grants, that they can start to focus a little bit more with their skeleton team on the front line and the children that they help. And PDSA as well have said that it's really simple. What they do is use it as part of their overall grant funding strategy. So they haven't completely replaced all of their fundraising missions and ideas and synopsis with Brevio. It just becomes part of their funding infrastructure. So they do hope that large funders kind of start to let them simply submit to Brevio, because as you can imagine, going on to the National Lottery and then onto Lloyd's and then onto the People's Postcode Lottery, having to fill out multiple different lengthy grant applications is really time consuming. And what we're doing with these larger organisations is allowing them to simply accept applications via the platform. So rather than having to go onto multiple different websites and fill out multiple forms, we're trying to work with them where their systems just start to accept one version of an application into their platform. And that's explained a little bit more in this diagram here. So this complicated diagram is what is happening right now without a sort of centralized platform. And I'll just explain it a little bit. So at the top, if you think about the primary funder as being a very large organization in the UK that gives out large amounts of grants, what they often do is then hand that money in little bits to secondary funders. And then they hand that little bits of money to local funders. And then the charities are kind of stood there going, oh, who do we apply to next? Do we apply to the local? Do we apply to the secondary? Do we apply to the primary? And you have lots of money moving around, becomes very complicated. And essentially what we're looking to do is create this on the next screen. So we want to help streamline the process. So if a charity or a non-profit chooses to use Brevio for their grants, essentially anybody that they would normally apply to, we would contact and say, would you like to start accepting applications via Brevio? And basically push that data into their systems so that you've got this kind of one place that you can go into and just start submitting your applications that way instead. So it's really helping to kind of streamline this process down and support skeleton teams. So what do you actually benefit from as a nonprofit or as a CIC or a charitable organisation? Well, you get one dashboard for all your funding needs and grant applications, as I've shown you in the screenshot previously. You save a lot of time and resources on the researching and the funding criteria and from filling in multiple different application forms. I'm sure many people who use Brevio still have their own ways of applying for funding, but the idea is that over time we will start to have a bigger network of funders, and you'll start to reduce down the time that you're spending on finding and filling out multiple forms. You stay completely in control of all the decisions and decide which grants you apply for. We've had definitely organisations who in the past maybe prefer not to take funding via gambling organisations, for example. You can completely decide who you would like to apply to. You'll just be matched and offered to apply to them. And you can complete your organizational profile just once, and you can easily update it as things change. So you might have things that you want to add in or new funding needs, or you might have different financials that you would like to provide. So you can continually update this, so you're not having to go out and search for it every single time and provide it in a different format each time. And as many funding needs as you like. So you can cover all types of requirements. You could put in one funding need, you might put in 20. You might have lots of different little funding needs or one massive one. You can configure them in any way, shape you like. And the ability to share your story. So a lot of people worry that they're getting matched just on text and data. That's not just the case. So there is plenty of space to really tell your story visually. There's free text fields. You can link out to YouTube videos, your social channels, whatever it is that you want to build to tell the story of your organization. And there is room for you to do that inside of the platform. So how does it help funders? I'm aware that everybody on the conversation, most of the people on the conversation are charities, but I did want to touch on the other side of the coin, because I appreciate lots of people cross over into both remits. So when we talk about funders, as I said earlier, we're not just talking about traditional grant makers. We've got philanthropists on the platform, corporate foundations, traditional grant makers, but then also sort of this young wave of new donors who are starting to build out more formal grant programs in their organizations. So what does it actually offer for funders? Brevio is essentially a technology solution for funders. So what it does, and I won't go through all of them in too much detail, but essentially when you go onto a website for a funder, often they might have their own version of an application form, or they've got their own version of the way that you can basically log in and apply for their grants. And it might be as simple, just fill out this PDF form and send us an email. It might be you need to download something really complex and old-fashioned like a Word document, or it might be that they've got a really all singing, all dancing, good-looking platform that you could go in and fill out all your details. All of these different methods are great, but the problem is they're doing them all individually. So what we're basically showing and suggesting with funders is that there is a way that you can basically go into the Brevio platform and you can generate your own application designs. So you can use Brevio's infrastructure, you can layer on top and make it look however you want to look. You can ask the questions that you want to ask, which will draw information out of the platform. But the idea is that all of this is happening in the background inside of Brevio. So for funders, it's really a good tech solution to make sure that they're not making people fill out different forms everywhere. If they want to embed it on their own website, that's absolutely fine, but all the matching is happening in the back end. So who's on board and who's behind it? So we'll touch a little bit at the moment on where we are now. So Brevio is live right now. It has been since the early this year. We've got over 1,000 nonprofits online actively using it. We've got matches that have already been made, resulting in funding. So we've got different matches ranging from 2,000 through to much larger portions of money that have been made. And that's as a result of the funders that are on our platform at the moment. So funding needs are driven in our funding search. And the reason that I say this is we're basically growing a network here. In order for Brevio to work, we need to have both sides of the coin to enable as many matches as possible. So when you go on and design your funding needs, we can start to think actively, okay, there's funding needs around this, we can go and find funders to match. So in order for us to create these matches, we need people to join the platform and tell us what it is that they need funding from. And some of the charities that are already on Brevio are on the right-hand side. You can see we've got a real range of different sizes. Cancer Research are on there looking for much larger portions of funding just for research internationally, and WaterAid similarly to fund massive projects overseas. We've got some really small local charities with only 2 or 3 people who work for them, looking for much smaller pots of money. It works for different people for different reasons, because funders are actively going in and putting in what they want to fund on their side. It might be that they only want to fund a small portion of money in Manchester, like our founder's done recently. She funded a neonatal service that was in Manchester for around £5,000 over Christmas, because they wanted to basically expand out and build out their services over a 4-week period. But also we have philanthropists on there who are wanting to specifically fund scientific research projects for much larger portions of money. So without sounding too cheesy, you've got to be kind of in it to win it. So you need to go on and create a funding need in order for us to start finding appropriate funders on the other end of the spectrum and start to expand and broaden out your horizon of who you might normally come across for funding. And I want to talk a bit about Marcel Speller, who's the founder of Brevio. So Marcel is actually a philanthropist. She's got a bit of a track record in delivering innovative technology solutions. So I don't know how many of you have booked holidays online using something like Expedia, but essentially Marcel created the very first version of what we now know to be Airbnb. So holidayrentals.com was back in the dot-com entrepreneur in 1996 when it all exploded, and holiday rentals was sold to Expedia. And as a result of that, Marcel found herself wanting to move more and more into the charitable sort of sector, and she essentially founded localgiving.org, which many of you might have come across. And she ran and funded that personally for 9 years, and it raised over 20 million when she was there. And I think it's more around 80 million now for local charities. And now what she's doing is using her money to find and fund Brevio. And that's to deliver really systemic change for the third sector. She's really passionate about driving the change that is really needed in the third sector and bringing forward this digital transformation that's needed. Brevio, I say this is because Brevio hasn't been created to profiteer from the third sector or to money make from the third sector. At some point, there will be a small charge in order to use the platform, and we're thinking a subscription fee of around £4.99 per month. That won't come into effect for a good few months, and we'll definitely give warning as to when that happens. And the reason that we will need to charge a small amount at some point is obviously to continue the research and development we're doing within the platform. So we'll make sure it's a really affordable amount of money and be really transparent on what the money's being used for. And obviously, naturally, on the other side of the spectrum, funders will also be paying to use the technology side of the platform as well. As a social enterprise and with social enterprise status, everything will go back into our research and our development to make sure that this is a really useful piece of technology as part of your funding strategies for years to come. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I appreciate I've just given you all a huge amount of information in a short space of time. And I just want to open up the floor and see if there's any questions that any of you have got, or if there's anything that Ed wants to pull out of the chat box that might be useful for us to cover. But the only thing I will say is that you can literally go onto the website right now and start building these out, or there might be someone in your team who would like to go and do that sooner rather than later. So yeah, it's on there right now, and it'll take you a matter of minutes to go and create your profile.
Good morning, Chloe and Ed. Martin Gallagher from the Clare
Martin,
Foundation.
how are you?
How are you doing, guys? Thank you very much for that. I mean, you just live and breathe this stuff. I'm looking across such a broad group of people here today. So hello and good morning and welcome everybody for joining us from far and wide, from down in the southwest and in the east and slightly further north than leafy Buckinghamshire. So it's great to have so many people, and even John Shepherd's here. You know, very old friend of mine. John, you want to show your face? You're just going to hide behind that handsome photograph there at the bottom. So, questions, guys. Do we have anyone? Oh, hello, Big John. How are you, fella? I think this stuff is innovative. I'm not sure about the dating scene. I think I'm way past that point. But I'd like to think that innovation and technology is going to move us forward in a different way, because we're not certainly getting out onto the tennis court or the golf course like Madeline Harding would want to be doing there and making the pals along the way. But so this is a new way of approaching and engaging like-minded organizations. I mean, does anyone have any questions? I know there was a few. I don't want to start pulling out names here, but Anyone want to kick us off there?
I think just to be aware of one question that's been asked a couple of times, and Chloe, I thought he was going to cover in the deck, but it wasn't, was just around the number of funders we've currently got. So do you want to go over that one, Chloe?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we are completely transparent at the moment, and we've got a smaller amount of funders on the moment. So we've got just under 20 actively creating different funds on the platform. And one thing I would like to kind of stress is that it's not about the amount of funders, it's about the amount of distributed funds. So you might have one funder who's, you know, put millions of pounds on in different types of funds, or you might have a philanthropist who's really specifically looking to fund one thing. So my advice would be go on and create a funding need, because that actively helps us go and find the right funders for you and your organization.
But Chloe, just asking that on that point then, I mean, obviously it's still in its infancy as a program. You're going to be looking to build the collaboration with the philanthropists and key corporate partners and so forth moving forward. Is that a big piece of work that Marcelo, your team at head office are doing?
Yeah, so that's actually mine and Marcel's remit. So at the moment, we're working with Lloyds Bank, the National Lottery, People's Postcode Lottery, some of the much larger funders, to start basically creating new funds and grants on the Brevio platform that are going to be exclusive to the Brevio platform as well, hopefully at some point in the future. So as these partnerships become formalized, and we are starting to work with government as well on different government grants over the year, we will definitely let everybody know, obviously, as they become available. It's something that we're really passionate about doing, is building out this network of different types of funders and really starting to expand your circles of not just your typical funds that you come across.
Super. Do I have this right? Prislava Fenton Fletcher, you had a question. Do you want to give it up there, Prislava?
I could read it in the chat box if that's more helpful, so I can see.
I'm trying to get people to engage too, you know.
That's all right. Everyone's scared of Zoom.
Come on, don't be afraid. It's a party time. It's 10 o'clock. My team is terrified when I get on here.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, you can.
No, I just wanted to know, because you're engaging with funders, and that's quite, I love the fact that you're matching. That's just so, sounds like music to my ears, just because we've been bogged into forms and research constantly, aren't we? So in terms of their response to your technology and what you're offering them as a solution, how do you find it so far? Because you have 20 funders. How is it progressing from your point of view?
Yeah, so really great kind of response and feedback from them, actually. As you can imagine, funders, and we know this, that funders are all very proud of the systems and processes that they've created, which is brilliant, and some of them are so innovative in what they've done, but it's just coming back to this, that they've all done it individually. So actually a lot of them have been really open and responsive, especially as a result of COVID this year, not wanting to make charities jump through hoops anymore, and actually wanting to make things as easy as possible. So the fact that we can help them kind of brand it, make it still feel and look like their own, but also still have this matching going on the back end, it has been great. But the only issue obviously with this is that it is kind of bespoke and one-on-one, so it can be a bit time consuming if they haven't got people working in their side of the organization in terms of technology. So we're trying to support them as best as possible from our side of the coin, and luckily we've got some people in our organization who are tech wizards, if you like. So we've got people who are really ready and on hand. As soon as a funder wants to do it, we can just go and build that for them. So if there's anybody in your own network, we've been working with councils, for example, and different types of funders who maybe could do with a bit of a digital transformation, send them our way, because we can build these out and create them very quickly. And we're looking for actively case studies and do this completely for free for people to show and prove that it works. So if there's anybody you think could be a good contender for that, do send them our way.
Super. Maddie Howe, you had a couple of questions in there early on and then a bit later. Would you like to?
I did, yes, thank you. And Ed, thank you very much, replied. Yes, I'm, as I think you may remember, Martin, anyway, we're a lottery funded programme. So we are a funder, but we have, anyway, I'm interested, but obviously we have a very small reach in that we're specific to Marsh and Mickfield in East Wickham. But we are aware, and we do support would-be people starting up some kind of non-profit from scratch, who are at the moment we're supporting with kind of helping them build their business plan, their sustainability strategy. And that is very much a need for a lot of people. We find, you know, they've got the concept, they've got the passion, but they haven't got the skills to actually put make themselves, I suppose, attractive to a lot of funders. And so, you know, we're interested to see, I don't know whether there's going to be anybody on the platform who might be offering that kind of support to would be beneficiaries. Yeah.
So Maddie, just to be clear, so do you offer that as a service essentially to people who are in the early stages of creating themselves?
Well, we are buying that expertise in at the moment for them, but you know, we only know of a couple of places to go to for it, and we try and be as local as possible as well, because we want our money to stay as local as it possibly can. But you know, if there are if there's some other resource that we could also draw in, and we can pay for it, that's the thing. But these people would be wanting to apply under their own steam on the Brevio platform, for example, and say, can anybody help me with the skills I need to write a good business plan so that I'm then more attractive to a funder? It's a bit chicken and egg.
It makes absolute sense. What you're saying. So at the moment, the Brevio platform is definitely specifically geared towards funding, like matching funding as opposed to skills. There's no reason the technology can't be built out in the future to start matching people on harnessing those skills. But certainly what I would encourage is that we do have kind of a comms stream where we can start to basically notify and let people know that these services are available. So we can definitely build that out at the moment. But at the moment, there's no kind of specific matching on skills and assistance with applications. It is geared up in a way though that we've got what I would sort of fundraising kind of experts or people who are brought in to help people write application things like that. The platform is built in such a way that if somebody had multiple clients, so people that they help fill out forms and basically create different funding needs and funding strategies, they could essentially go in and build these on behalf of charities and then invite them into the platform. So it does work if you're somebody who works on the more sort of professional side of advising and helping charities as well. You'd be able to keep an eye on sort of all of the different funding needs and applications in one place. So it does work in that way as well. So do send you. You're welcome.
Hi, I'm going to call on Sophie Coles. You were asking a question about overseas, and then Debbie Denier, who was sort of as chair of trustees for Springboard. So maybe Sophie first and then Debbie afterwards. Just get a couple of questions there, which are quite keen about word diversity.
Thank you, Martin.
Sure. I'm gonna pick on people, guys. Sorry.
That's great.
I do.
In a way, thank you, Chloe and Ed. You have answered my question, or at least I can see that WaterAid are applying for funding through the platform, and obviously the work that we do at Frank Water is incredibly similar to the work that WaterAid funds overseas. I think I'm a little bit apprehensive, if I'm completely honest, having seen, spoken to people at things like the Good Exchange previously, and quite often it's suitable for local projects that might be slightly more popular for funding to organisations. We find with a very niche market that the number of funders out there that are potentially suitable for us is very small anyway. So initially hearing that there's not a huge number of funders on the platform makes me worry that we probably wouldn't be suitable for any of them at the moment, but it would be something I'd look for in the future. Yeah,
so what I would say to that, Sophie, is that naturally, in order to be matched with somebody, you would need to be on the platform. So joining at a later date, which some people do say, you know, when you've got more funders on, it makes it really difficult for us to figure out what it is that you want funding for. So if you have the funding need on there and you've just said, you know, this is specifically what we're looking for funding for, we can actively go out and find funders to match that, or we can find philanthropists who might be willing to fund that, or we can nudge them and say, you know, did you know that there's a funding need here that you might not have never come across and that you might actually be open to funding? We can't do that unless we know what the funding need is. And the nice thing about Brevio is it continually matches in the background. So, you know, if there's not only 20 on right now, or 20 different types of funds on right now, there's no need to say that there won't be 200 on in a month's time. But if you're not on there, we won't be able to let you know that you've been matched. So yeah, that's all I'd say at these early stages is we need to grow the network, basically.
Is there any way on the platform, or will there be in the future, to see the areas that are managing to be matched? Will there be any way to kind of see which funds have come about through the platform, so that
So we're
on the
linked
charity side we can see?
Yeah, so we're linked up with 360 Giving. So all funds that are matched will be pushed straight through into 360. So there'll be full transparency over what has been matched. And it's more about what's been funded as opposed to what's been matched. So the actual transparency of what has been funded, the amount that's been awarded, all of that will be pushed into 360 Giving. And then we will also start to do analysis as well on the funding needs throughout the UK. So we work quite closely with NPC, New Philanthropy Capital, and we're working on a project with them at the moment, which is around looking at the analysis of actually what is needed throughout the UK, to start to help advise funders on, actually, you think that you'd like to fund this, but potentially you might be looking to fund this area because this is where the need lies. And right now, nobody's funding it. So as that product and that tool is developed out, we'll let people know, so you can go and have a bit of an interactive play, because it might be that for something like yourselves, who you say is quite niche, and there's only a small amount of people that are funding it in that area, it will show that. So it will show that, you know, you're in an area where actually this funding need is heavily underfunded, and that actually by funding it as a philanthropist or as somebody who wants to set up a new corporate fund, you'd be having a massive impact, because you're not funding something that's being competed for at a high level. So that's a tool that we're working on right now and hope to roll out in the next couple of months, and would love to get feedback on it as when it develops. So yeah, definitely kind of stay in touch with us, because it might be something that we can get some really good advice on from somebody like yourself.
Super. Okay, Sophie. Debbie, do you want to pop in there? And I got there's a bit of a queue for questions now, so I'm going to keep you all going here.
So for us, part of our challenge is that we don't run things as projects so much, and so we just, you know, continually run the service, and then we're trying to attract funding to continually deliver the service. So
Can you tell us a little bit what you do, Debbie?
So we're a charity which supports unemployed professionals and graduates with job search, advice and support. And thankfully we have lots of volunteers who provide pro bono support. So our coaches and things provide pro bono support, and our speakers. But we have costs in terms of the day-to-day running costs of like our databases. And then we also provide a counselling service which we fund. So we have to pay for those costs. But because we just run it as a continuous service, that's our real challenge in terms of attracting funding.
Yeah.
And we've always relied on grant funding, and obviously that's becoming more challenging. So we've been kind of looking at diversifying funding streams. So it sounds great that this is, you know, bringing in other alternatives to grant funding as well. But how does it work if you're kind of really looking for core funding?
So you would you'd basically go onto the platform and you'd set up what we do is pre-populate what we just call core costs. So you would set up a continual core cost funding need. So yours would basically have no end date, or it might have an end date for in a year's time, and then you might want to go in and refresh it. So you would basically go in, set it up, pull all the information in that you need, and you'd just have that funding need sat running continuously in the background as your core costs. And as we bring on any funders that match that they maybe want to fund something to do with the themes and the focus areas that you've just discussed, they will basically be matched with you, and you'll be able to apply from there. So think of it as something that's just going to run in the background for you, as opposed to bespoke individual funding needs. It works in both sides of the coin, for unique projects, but also for continual core costs.
Fantastic, thank you.
I've got a couple of more questions here. Jane and then Jennifer. Would you be happy to go next, please, Jane? Is there more than one Jane? No, that's the only question. I'm trying to look at my screen here and count them all.
Jane Layton it is on here.
Yeah, Jane Layton.
No worries. I think I can read Jane's if
yeah, I was going to say I think she's had to leave, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
I can see there's a question from Jennifer around tailoring applications for specific funders. So when you apply to a fund or a funder, some funders obviously ask for individual there might be some really unique questions that they want to find out. And what they can do is basically add on just 2 or 3 unique questions. We encourage them to be quite simplistic questions. And what you can do then at that stage is add that extra information, which is tailored and unique to that funder. You are matched on the data that you're providing. And obviously that can't be kind of tailored and unique. That needs to be done on the standardized matching in order for data to work in the back end. In order to provide them kind of tailored and unique bespoke applications, you can go in and you can slightly amend, if you want to, each application before it's submitted. You don't need to do that, but if you feel like you'd like to go in and tailor it slightly to maybe add in something that you think this is really highly relevant for this funder specifically, I'd like to let them know that we did this 6 months ago, you can go in and just add that in just before you click send. So there is definitely ways in which you can slightly tailor applications. Think of Brevio though as the first date. If we go back to the dating analogy, you know, it's not going to be the last conversation that you have with them. It's just going to be the very first introduction. At that stage, they might say, can you provide us, you know, they might want some more information. They might want to talk to you further, and they probably will if you're successful. So yeah, if you think about it kind of in that first date remit, if you like, to get past that sort of first, not just the eligibility, but present them with all the information that they're going to need to make a decision.
Okay, thanks, Chloe. Jennifer Whitley, I'd asked already, then Madeline Harding, and then Mark Rand, please.
That was my question that Chloe just responded to, so that's great. Thank
so then
you.
I'll pass to Madeline Harding, please, and then Mark Rand.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Martin, and thanks, Chloe and Ed. It's very interesting. I think Brevio sounds like a great idea. I had a few questions, so apologies, but I guess the first one is, could you tell us a bit about how you differ from the Good Exchange? And
yeah, absolutely.
Could I also ask, you just touched on fees for charities that are looking for funding, and you mentioned there probably would be fees for funders as well in the fullness of time. Can you give us an idea of what the scale of those fees might look like? And then my last and final question, if you don't mind taking 3 in a row, and then I'll be quiet, is, do you have any international funders right now?
Yeah, so I'll probably take them in reverse order. So we've got a few of the philanthropists that are on the platform are international. They're based in the US, and they are quite open to the different types of projects that they look to fund. When we think about traditional international funders, there's a few corporate foundations that we are looking to partner with, and certainly investment and wealth management firms who primarily are overseas based, with also UK headquarters as well. So in terms of completely overseas, no, but definitely people who basically span both the UK, Europe, and the States right now. We will start to build those out. Obviously, the UK is completely our focus right now in terms of making sure that we've got enough funders that focus on UK specific projects or funding needs. But we are also conscious that we want to keep building that network out, which is why we're sort of strategically partnering with people who have an overseas presence as well in terms of their funding. And then in terms of the cost to use the platform, I don't know if you use local giving at all for any in the past, but it will be very similar concept to that, where they charge a very minimal membership fee for the year. So that, as I said earlier, is to kind of cover like our own core costs and research and development. How we imagine that working will be in the next 6 months. It's completely free to use right now, so you can just go on and use this. But we will start to roll out a small subscription fee, and that will be around between $4.99 to $8.99 per month. Some people have suggested that it's best done on a sliding scale based on income. $4.99 to one charity is a lot, $4.99 to another isn't so much. So again, welcome to feedback on terms of things that you think have worked appropriately or things that you think are fair. We just need to basically cover our research and development costs. So there's no extortionate fee going to suddenly be applied to use Brevio. It is free right now because we want people to go and use it. And then when the costs do get rolled out, we'll give plenty of warning, and hopefully we've had lots of conversations like this one to make sure that it's fair. So if you've got any feedback or ideas around that, please give them to us. And then just this kind of question around the Good Exchange. The Good Exchange was created by a foundation, as you might know. So it was created by a funder. Originally, the technology and the platform was created to suit their own personal needs. Then they realized that they could sort of roll this out into the market and charge for it. So I guess the premise and the purpose behind it was not to fix the issues that we see within the funding sector, but it was created as a result of sort of technology that could be used by different funders. As a result of that, they've not got a huge sort of diversity in terms of what they're looking to fund and the funders that they bring on. And they've been going for a long time and don't, from what I understand, have any plans to implement any high level of due diligence or work with government sector projects either. So I think our focuses are in completely different directions. By all means, I mean, what I've told people is there should be no one product. There should be no one unique go-to product necessarily that you use as part of your fundraising strategy. When you think about technology and subscription platforms, you'll have lots of different softwares that you pay for, which are maybe $4.99 here or $2.99 here. If you have a broad range of them and they're all helping you in some way, shape or form, that's what's important. So what I would employ you to do is just basically try them out and see which one works for you. The Good Exchange works for some people because it's got a really unique bespoke style of funding on the platform, but Brevio might work for you also.
Thanks.
And I can see someone's put there, yeah, the Good Exchange is quite geographically specific as well. That's, yes, absolutely.
Mark Brand.
Good morning, thank you. That was a really interesting presentation. It looks like a really interesting product. What I'm interested in is how much money have you distributed so far?
Yeah, so no money goes through the platform, Mark. I don't know if I probably didn't make that too clear. So we don't, and that's another bold difference between ourselves and the Good Exchange. Money goes through their platform. We don't handle any money. So no money is exchanged on Brevio. It is quite simply a matching platform. When a funder gets to the stage where they want to fund somebody, that is done and handled outside of the Brevio platform. It is quite simply the meeting platform. In terms of money or money that's been awarded, if you like, or people that have made promises to exchange money, we've just delivered, I think it's under, and do you want to jump in here, Ed?
I'm not sure on the actual figure.
That's an offload.
Yeah.
I think the rough total is we did between October and December, it was close to a few million. And again, that'll all be published on 360 Giving by the different various funders. And again, something we'll be completely transparent about, you know, as people get awarded funding, we'll look to make that completely transparent within the Brevio platform, who, what, where and how, as well as we move forward. But again, Mark, any feedback on how you think that's best done or what you think might be useful for people to see and understand rather than just figures and stats, most welcome to let us know if you think there's something that could be configured or said in a way that's actually really useful to understand for charities.
Thank you.
And the last question, Jane Leighton, if I pronounced it properly, has just got back on again. Jane, would you like to come on and ask your questions, please?
Thank you, Martin. Sorry, I disappeared for a while. I just wanted to understand a little bit more. I'm sorry if I've just missed it in the last 5 minutes, about impact, how you report back on the impact of any grants made. And is that something that's done via the platform, or do you do that directly between the applicant and the funder?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, definitely the focus is that initial meeting. We'd like to build it out to a stage where it sort of does become this closed loop, if you like, of, you know, where was the need, what was funded and delivered, and who, what was the impact that had and what result of that had. The interesting around impact reporting that we've discovered is that everybody does it in their own way. Some funders want it done in a case of, you know, literally what was spent and give us some evidence of that. Some people want it done in actual reporting format in a standardized way. There's so many different ways that you can report on impact, and also so many different ways that the funder then uses that information to decide if they've done a good job. So we're in the process at the moment of trying to figure out what works, because obviously there is no one size fits all for all funders. And charities also want to give that information in different ways as well. So right now it's quite simplistic in the sense that you would basically just sort of upload your impact report based off a template tool that we give. But again, that's something that we want to build out, and we're working actively with different partners within the space to try and figure out what is the best way to report on impact that isn't exhausting for yourselves as charities, and actually gives enough information for people to say, yeah, that was, that was a success, that was great. So I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but if you've got any feedback on how that is best done, let us know.
Yes, it's hard. Yeah, I agree. It's hard. One size doesn't necessarily fit all. And I'm also, because you said about how no money goes through the platform, I'm guessing as well that you do have that opportunity to have direct conversation with the funder, which is of benefit, because then though the virtual world is great, it is also nice to be able to say a personal thank you and have, pick up the phone if that's what they're happy with as well. So
yeah,
that's often a great way that's often the best way to demonstrate impact, is just have a quick phone call, say thank you, and chat to them.
And Marcel, our founder, would 100% agree with you on that. She has funded a lot of charitable organisations in her time, and just quite a few through Brevio herself as well. And she doesn't ask for impact reporting. She picks up the phone and she just talks to them, and how's it gone? What did the money go on? Was it useful to you? What could we have done better? How do we build out this relationship? Yeah, tech only works to a certain point in time, and at that point you've then got to build out that relationship further. So all we're trying to do is reduce that burden right at the beginning, and then let those relationships develop outside of the technology.
Yeah. Thank you, sounds great.
Everybody, I'm very conscious of the window of time. Debbie Denyer, would you like to give a closing and thank the speakers?
I don't know whether I'm the right person to do it. I've already asked my question, so I think I'm probably
okay. So from my point of view, I've had through Helen and Felicity, we've had the privilege of speaking to Chloe and Ed at close range and about this whole new setup of Brevio, and I think it's another tool. It's something that you have to explore. It's something you have to work with. It's something you have to engage and see how it works for you and your organization. And whether it's the right fit right now, it doesn't mean to say it won't change over the course of years, given the person that's leading it and given the team that's underpinning it. From our point of view, we'll probably want to engage with Chloe and Ed and see where this goes. And I'm grateful for them today, just coming on and talking to this group of almost 30 people on a private workshop. So Chloe and Ed, on behalf of us all, I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time out to join us, for giving us an insight and insightful answers to questions. And I'm sure that, anybody that needs to be in touch with them, you have their email addresses. If you haven't, we'll happily repost them and make sure that you can get in touch, or pick up the phone. I mean, I'm a picking up the phone. I hate writing emails because I'm slower. As Madeline Harding will tell you, I'm always on the phone to her. Text first, are you free? Can I have a chat? But the power of communication and developing relationships and working with organizations that are not always in your world is important. And from our point of view, as a little pump here, is we're the Clare Foundation, nothing is too big or too small for us to have a conversation. And so please do feel free to engage with us or connect with, if not myself, Felicity or Helen. Again, thank you to Chloe and Ed and Brevio for coming on. This would not have been possible today without your attendance and your support and ongoing collaboration with the Clare Foundation. But it would not have been possible had it not been for Felicity and Helen especially, who's had lots of technical issues, and she told me not to be cruel on this call. But just as part of, we have a really small team. There's only 5 of us, so three full-time and 2 part-time people. And we do a lot of this stuff. So we're really happy to have you on here. We look forward to working with you more, engaging with you. If we can do anything to help or put you in touch with anyone else, please do reach out and touch base with us. Ed, Chloe, Brevio, everybody on here today. Young Blakeman there hiding behind his mummy's shoulder. Good morning, young man. To everybody, have a lovely week, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you all very much.
Nice to meet you all. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.
Cheers, guys.